Hello, good morning. My name is Randi, as Nicole said, and I am one of 9 employees in the Tato office, where we work for Yoshimada, who founded the office. First, I would like to start with a small, if this one works, it doesn't, okay. Do it like this, with a small video of Yoshimada greeting us. No sound. Reset one back.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to this lecture. My name is Yoshimada, and I am the founder and principal of Tato Architects. I'm very honored to have been invited to give a lecture at this symposium. Unfortunately, I was not able to come myself, so in my stead, Randi, one of my employees, will present selection of our project with focus of borders between spaces, functions, and ideas. Thank you for inviting my office. I hope to get the opportunity to personally do a lecture at another time. Thank you.
So I will show how we work with our ideas by presenting a lot of our projects today. And first of all, I would like to start with our business card, which is the first thing that Yoshimada designed when he graduated from art school. In Japanese culture, the business card is extremely important. Like, when you receive it with both hands, and you read it nicely and put it nicely and store it afterwards, so you can remember contact information and names and everything. So it's something you handle with care. However, Yoshimada chose to design it more like a receipt or a receipt, that like something you might end up throwing away. So to get away from this formality and like starting these types of misinterpretations, like, is it a receipt or a business card? Is it something you throw out, or should you keep it? So these types of ideas he works a lot with, of like, first, when you see something, it might be one thing, but when you really look, or some other day, you might see a completely different thing. The first project is a house in Rocco, where we worked a lot with openness. The house is located on a slope and has on the back side the retaining wall, and then the large view out into over the Kobe city. We chose to say that the most standard would be to make like a closed bottom floor and then a large top floor that only connects to the view outside, and saying this is pretty, this is what we want to see. But we wanted to say that, how to say it? Instead of doing this typical thing, we wanted to have the openness in the bottom, and instead of saying like, when we architects give a building a certain form, we also criticize the surroundings. If we chose to put a big wall in the backside to the back wall, we would say, we don't want to see this, we don't want to have this, and then connect it. We chose to connect the whole space, so the bottom floor connects and merges with the outside, and then instead putting on top a closed space for the residential live. So on the bottom floor, there is a small toilet, and then the kitchen and living area that is open outside. And due to the slope of this cliff, if you stand below this house, you can actually not see into the house, even though everything is open and glass. And you have the complete translucency throughout the house. So inside and outside merges together in stuff and things. There's no road leading up to this, only a stair. So everything had to be carried and built manually. No machines, no big stuff. We had a small slope from upside that could bring down some stuff, but in general, everything had to be scaled, so nothing was weighing about 100 kilo, so it could be carried and built by the workers. And we chose to have a very open structure, which shows all the cords and stuff, so nothing is really hidden away everything is translucent and easy to understand. The only actual storage space is on the second floor, where a translucent wall covered with this type of film, that depending on the reflections, you can see parts of the inside and parts of the outside. So when you have a lot of stuff inside behind, even though it's a storage space, you can still see some of the reflections of the things behind. So you merge these borders together of the styles and the works. The Rocco house was very inspired by these towers, where again the whole structure is visible and everything is easy to understand and straightforward. And while we made this house, Yoshimura was very inspired by the towers and started to collect other images and inspiration of other houses or buildings that is put up into the air, which also connect to very early Japanese architecture, where most houses were either raised from the ground or built into the ground. So this connects also with the Japanese cultural architecture and history. So this is some of the collections of all his raised buildings around the world, of very different environments. And while he studied these types of raised buildings, he also came across the Queenslander, that is an Australian building type where they also raise the floors and have used the bottom space for storage and other things, and then raise it up. And then we were contacted by a guy called Steve in Australia that actually were from Hamilton, and he wanted us to build a Queenslander house. And again, with the Queenslander, you get this style of the whole house is just its own structure. You can move it vertically and horizontally, which Shimada also finds very interesting. This small book is about a small house just being driving away that he likes. And also for the Queenslander types, they have this parts of large parts being a terrace or like the boundary space and then the house. So they also work a lot with these in-between spaces. This is from a magazine where the orange shows the terrace part and then the yellow is the inside part. So it shows a lot of different ways to work with this. And then there's House in Hamilton, where we were inspired by the previous images that Mr. Shimada has found in the magazines and the ideas of the half being terrace, half being inside, outside. So we choose to build these two volumes in a 45-degree angle, so they cut in the center. And then by doing this, we could mix what is inside, upside, outside in the terrace shapes and the levels. So you get the views. So inside we have a lot of glass walls that also can be opened and closed. So again, the terrace space and the inside space and the boundaries between will merge and change depending on how the residents choose to use it and depending on the day and time. Also, you get this, what is near and what is far, like the reflection in the windows, the actual reflection is far away. However, when you have the reflection in the window, it comes here, so it's near you. So the distance also changes depending on if the windows and areas is open or closed. Another house that was actually built before House in Rocco, or before House in Hamilton, is this house in Kawanishi that also used a lot of the ideas or the concepts that is also used in the Queenslander style. It's also raised from the ground, kind of, and it also works a lot with borders and in-between spaces. On the side, it's a quite weird site because we have a road that goes in almost full-size scale, and then it goes down to a small path that is only like 70, 80 centimeters. And we thought that if we choose to build a wall all the way out to the side edge, then this path that lots of the local people use would be like very tight and like dark and very small. So instead we chose to make this natural path between the two roads into some semi-outside-inside space where the entrance of the house is. So you get this, like, this asphalted area is actually on the side and is the residence ownership, but we choose to merge it together with the path to change the boundaries and the borders of the house and the outside and the public and private. And also we have the brick walls that is currently surrounding the neighbors. We chose to take the same wall and continue it inside the house, so the outside of the neighbor's walls actually kind of starts to become the inside of our house. And this wall started to cover from the bottom floor that is quite open, then the wall comes in and covers to make privacy in between. And then on the inside, this box that has a toilet and bathroom, it's lower than the second floor level. So you have this in-between space that is like in-between, upside, downside. Like, it's not the first floor, it's not the second floor, it's in-between spaces and in-between the floors and the sky and the ground. So it becomes an interesting small space that connects to the next parts of the house. When we start to develop a project, we start by doing scale models in 1 to 100, and we do almost all kind of ideas that come into our heads, like even the possible and impossible and lots of stuff, just to test the ideas and test the limits of these. And then we decide on some kind of concepts we like, build scale models in 1 to 30, which is quite detailed. We normally have, like, most of our clients is private clients. So stuff like renderings and this kind of things is too time-consuming compared to what it would give their clients. So mostly we work in drawings and models to convey what kind of feeling and what kind of house we would like to build for them. In the beginning, our concept for this house was with a flat roof. However, after a meeting with the client, we decided to start making a more gabled roof with more life and space. We work very closely with our clients, and I think this is also part of why lots of our architecture has the same styles and lines of concept and ideas, but also differ a lot from each other, because it's very important for us that we are building a house for the clients. We don't come with some crazy or weird idea that we just want to make and then push it onto the clients. It's very important for us that they can live their life in this space that we built for them. So in the end, it ended up being with a slope roof and a small chimney for ventilation. So when it gets hot in summer, it's easy to have a nice airflow inside. Which we then later discovered while doing more of the Queenslander work, and that this is the same kind of anonymous intelligence that we used that is actually also used other places. So Mr. Shimon also find this very interesting, that sometimes you end up doing something that other people somewhere else is also doing without knowing, and then later you find the same information. So even without knowing, you get into the line of architectural history and lay and develop the same styles or different styles in a continuous path. So another project is house in Itami, where the outside is just more or less a box, very clear, and then instead we worked a lot of the interior space and how it would flow together and connect. So instead of saying that we have to have a structure with stairs and rails and everything, we started to think about what if we only see the structure as the box and the 2 floor slabs. So stairs and everything would merge more together with the furniture and the style. So when you move in and everything is connected. You see more everything as furniture and interior, more than you see it as or architecture. So when you see this room, you see a squared room with a box or a piece of furniture in the middle. You don't see a room with a stair. It can be closed off so it gets, and behind we put the bathroom. And we also, the way we put the halls and the stairs, they twist and turn in the same way as garden stones in Japanese gardens. They also direct your visions. You have the small stone that you step on, and then you will focus down on the ground and the area around you, below you, when you walk on the small stones so you don't step to the side. And then you have this larger stone where you stop up and then you look around and look at the garden. So depending on how these stones are laid out in the Japanese gardens, it directs your views, and it kind of determines how you see the garden. You don't see everything, you see what you are made to see by following the steps. And in the same way, we have the stairs and furniture and everything that goes up in different directions. So when you walk around the house, you get different views depending on the flow. Where a house in Itami is only, or is mainly the interior, where we use this kind of abstract dynamics. We also have a house in Toyonaka where we used it on the outside too, so everything moves around and starts to be pushed out or pulled back to create terrace and spaces in between and outside. And again, we merge furniture and interior and structure and architecture together to make these boundaries between everything disappear. So again, depending on who sees it, if you're a structural engineer, you will see, oh, this floor and this table is also the structure. While as if you're interior design, you see more in furniture and spaces. So it all depends on the viewpoint. There's also a study table that we made for Hornbach in Germany, where the concept was like floating leaves coming together, and a table that can be changed depending on your needs in size and everything. It was inspired by the Japanese small table called chabudai. In general, the Japanese say you can actually live on just one tatami mat because it's long enough for you to lay and sleep. You can sit there and you can stand there. So it's space enough to do everything you need. Then it's the furniture that adds the function. If you're gonna sleep, you will add the futon and go to sleep. Or if you're gonna study or eat or do anything else, you will add the chabudai table with a small plate with legs that can fold, so you can pack it away in the evening. And in the same way, we wanted this table to be able to fold in or fold out and change in shape or colors, depending on the light in your house. It will also change a lot of this reflection of the color. So we choose to be inspired by our normal colors and textures that we use in our houses, white on wood. And then often we also use some kind of very colorful addition to our architecture. So this is why we chose to do the study table in the same way. And also it's a DIY project, so we don't imagine that everyone buy this recipe for this table and just make it exactly like this. As a DIY, we find it more interesting to see how people would develop this and say, maybe we want rounded edges, or we want different colors, or different top with more colorful, or anything. So we find it very inspiring to go through all the social media and find the people who have tagged this table and build it by themselves, and see how they have choose to redevelop the table to fit their own needs, because that is what we think is the most important, that you can change the table to fit you. We often work with patterns and repetitions and mirroring to see how this is more study models, concept model of the spaces repeating, going together to make different structures. And this one, House in Hokusetsu, is also using this freedom of an autonomous form where we use the very simple shape of the square and diamonds to create this never-ending house of shapes. So in general, the square is like the room, or like it has the function, whereas the diamond shapes has the open space, or it's the space you go between. So some of them is inside space, some of them is outside space, and terrace and courtyards. The resident of this house wanted a closed house to the outside, so they wanted like the inner space to be the most important, but they also wanted the garden and the outside space. So we choose to make these types of courtyards in between. And then on the 2 floors, the geometric changes, so some is open, some is closed, so you get this whole labyrinth of small rooms that connects together. We also studied a lot of how much should the roof change. Should it be very different or just flat? And in the end, we ended up with a mix of these spaces, so you have lots of spatial things too. The next house in Miyamoto, which Nicole also told about. That is a steel structure that spirals up in these triangled plates from both sides, so you have a spiral path from 2 sides that meets in the living room and then spirals out up to the terraces. Again, as Nicole said, from the outside it's very simple and very unnoticeable, while as from the inside it becomes this whole pattern of, in general, Japanese people are very private, so they prefer to what is inside their house is only for them. It's also pretty rare that Japanese people invite other people home or that other people stay. So your home is more or less just for you. This one is a small video of about 3 minutes. They will also talk in Japanese, but it gives, I think, a better impression of the spatial as it moves around compared to pictures.
建物の1階分は49平米です。この家は7メートルの空間の中に13枚の床が
The interior space is in total 7 meters high, and we have 13 floor slabs that defines all these areas inside the house.
奥さんから言われたのは全てをこう表に出したい。
So when we were contacted by this client, they said they wanted an open house where people can feel each other. We don't need any doors or not really any walls either. We really just want to feel each other, and also we don't want storage space. We love the things we own. We don't want to stuff them inside a small closet or a small room and like forget about them. We want to have everything in an open space where we can see and walk between it. So it was very important for them to have this openness where you can say, for many people it's a lack of privacy, but this is what they wanted. They also said, for now, everyone sleeps on the top floor, all 3 of them, the family of the mom and dad and their kid, sleeps together on the top floor. Whereas when she grows older, she might want her private room, but in this spiraling with 2 spirals of the stairs, it's possible to close off a room in the future if you want to build walls. So it's possible to put up walls and take them down again if you want to. But for now, they said, we want the dream house that we envision. So we can always put the walls later.
70センチの高さで床を切り分けたのは、すべての床を机のようにも使える。
So the floor slabs is spaced with 700 millimeters between each. So this way we can merge it as it becomes a sitting place or a table or a shelf. The whole house becomes like, is it a floor or is it a table or is it a place to put what and put what, where? So in this way you can mix everything together. The wife likes to make these kind of small collections of everything. So even though there's already lots of stuff, I think there will come lots more. And we think as architects that it's very interesting to see this development of the house. Like, we have lots of pictures right before they moved in, where it's very open and it looks like almost an art gallery or something. But it's not really a complete house before the resident moves in and put all their stuff there. So you can see people living in it. And it's very interesting to see how it changes and how they move around, because the levels is very open, so you can change the rooms or the functions how you want to, depending on how you place the stairs and the furniture. Also, the small stairs can move. They're not fixed to the floor. So like, if you want it to be a little to the one side or a little to the other side, you can change that too. So this is one of the pictures. Like, often when we finish a project, we are allowed to do a photo shoot before the residents move in. And this is the most common that you will see in Japanese magazines, will be before the residents has actually moved in. So it has this very nice and clean Zen-like feeling of everything being open and light. And we also choose the top slabs is hung from it's a steel structure, so the top slabs is hung from the ceiling, while the bottom slabs is supported by a steel beam. So this middle space is completely open. There's no structural points in between there. And then people start moving in, using the spaces and changing. The rails on the stairs is not on most of these pictures. There's rails on some, but they are also removable. So like, if you want to move one stair to the other side, you can move the rail, or the residents also, like, in some of the places, they feel like they are more in the way than they're useful. So most of the places, they have taken them off. Whereas this one is completely open with no walls. This one used the same pattern with the triangle spaces and the two stairs spiraling up to the upper side. However, it has lots of walls, so the interior space becomes very different, more cave-like or more like a terrain that you move up in between. So again, the floor levels and desk and chairs, everything merged together. But by putting in the walls, the interior space changes radically. And also, as you have the wall, you notice more of the texture and the materials change. That also changes the light and the feeling of the room from white and wood. Another project is house in Sonobe, where we have worked a lot with the indoor-outdoor in-between spaces and the semi-outdoor interfaces between the surrounding and the house. By coming there to the site the first time, we noticed a lot of the neighbors is the typical fast-produced Japanese houses, but almost everyone have some kind of extra translucent small pavilion, garage, something built onto the house to dry clothes or storage stuff. So by noticing this, we thought that it would be nice to, in our design, do the same and incorporate these in-between spaces where people can use either just covered, so they are in general completely outside, or also with the big sliding doors, so it can open out depending on the weather or the feeling of the residents. So here you have the normal closed way, where you have an open deck up in the top, and then you have the semi-outdoor indoor space. And when you open these doors, the top or upper deck becomes enclosed. So if you are drying clothes or anything else, you can, like if it's a rainy day, you can open here. And then you connect out to the garden. Because of the walls and the opening being centered at 45 degrees, the way you direct your vision or your view becomes towards the street or into the garden. It's not really direct onto the neighbors, as if it was straightly above. So when you look out here, you would look out to the road and not straight into the neighbor wall. And in this house in Sonobe, we also worked a lot with the lighting, whereas there's the very light, bright outside semi-outdoor spaces, and then you have the in-between space of the dining area, and then the back space of the tatami room that is more dark and cozy. And then the living room have a double height space to give more openness, even though it's small. And again, even though the house seen from outside is very slim, then you have this diagonal wall that makes it a lot larger in how you see it and how you visualize. So again, the house is small, and in general, the triangles and shapes are very simple. But how the day progresses and the light will change a lot of the interior and how you see it. And again, we have a lot of the reflections of what is near and far, because you have one window, and then you have an angle window that also reflects some of the garden into this space, and then around and into. The same for the outdoor. So for their daughter, when she swings on the swing, is she outside or is she inside or in between? She goes in between on this swing on the borders. That changes the whole perspective of how the house works and what you're doing. Again, when we started designing this house, we again made lots of different models of how to make this private, public, semi-outdoor, indoor space. And one of our first ideas was to develop this type of form that follows maybe a little more of the house in Hamilton with this covered line. But again, after talking with the clients and thinking about the budget, we decided to make the normal house shape form and started to search for how it would be easier or most practical to cut it, and how to create these kind of spaces that we wanted, that creates this inside-outside, in-between spaces. So it ended up with this N shape. This is still a model process where there's still windows in this shape. We ended up dropping these because it's translucent enough to feel the outside even though it's closed. We work a lot with models and also lately with VR, again to make sure that our clients understands and knows what kind of spaces we are building for them. Because I think often architects they talk a lot about their ideas and concepts, but it can be difficult to understand for people who don't normally talk about it. This is also like a small part of our office. Our whole office is just one room. So everyone knows what everyone is doing, though like normally Mr. Shimada will get the assignments and then he will put one of us employees in charge of this project. So we will be in charge from everything from idea development until finished completion. So you will know the whole process of every house. But because everyone sits so close, everyone knows what everyone is doing. And we also always talk a lot together about how to develop the projects. Another project is a house in Tsukimiyama. In Japan, you are allowed to build very close to each other, but there's still very strict fire regulation rules. House in Sonobe had a quite big site, so it was possible to do the setback enough to having the translucent wall is easy burnable, so they have to be set back enough that it's safe in case of fire. Whereas in this house, it was not possible, but we still wanted to make an indoor garden or some kind of in-between space. So instead, we built up the walls around the whole site and put in fire-resistant windows. So we comply with the fire regulation rules. And then inside, we built the garden. The wife of this client has a small aromatherapy. So she has a small aromatherapy room that has a connection from the outside, but also from the inside up from their bedroom. So more or less half the house is garden and interior space where they can play and have fun. And then there's a kitchen dining area, and then the top there's a bedroom. And again, it's very important for us that people can live more openly and don't have like too many closets and spaces. So lots of this is open and it's easy to get to and get around and get into. So because the Japanese houses are so small, by doing this openness, it makes it feel a lot larger. A recent project is a house in Tato, where we choose to also look in the areas around the house and see what other types of houses were there. There was a lot of these kind of copied houses that was built in set and pairs. So we choose to do the same with our house, though for the other ones it's 2 houses separately, then we mix this one together, where one is very open and merged in this semi-outdoor indoor space, and one is very closed and private. So it's very, you can say it's out of context maybe in the house, but still in context because it refers to the house and the history of the area, but it also creates something new that we hope that other people might start developing too. So it allows for the next people that do something to also go a little off, if you want to say it like that. So you enter into the garden and then you can continue into the living dining area. There's also a small space with computer and storage. And we have, again, like this house uses a lot of space on the stairs because we both have one stair that goes up to the 2nd floor out in the garden area, but we also have an interior stair that connects up. Then there's a small balcony space out into. And we use the top of the functions as small repose and places to stay and sit. So I think, thank you.